2023 with the chemical engineering degree, and now I work at the Estée Lauder Companies as an associate engineer and aroma scientist. So before we get started today, I just want to say thank you so much to every single one of you for being here today, to the AICHE chapter at VCU for hosting me, to the CLSC department, to Dr. Ferry, to Kimberly, and for everybody for having me here today. This is such a full circle moment for me, and I'm just really grateful to be here to share one of my biggest passions, that is the world of fragrance. So, without further ado, on today's agenda we have a quick, hopefully, little introduction. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about myself, about my career and my education, and kind of like my discovery journey on how I got to study chemical engineering and like now work in fragrance. So we'll have a little chat about that. And then we're gonna go into our Fragrance 101 olfactive class, which is why you have your raw materials in front of you. We're gonna play perfumery student today. We're gonna smell some things, and I'm just gonna tell you a little bit more about the fragrance world, but I just want to put in your mind, like imagine this huge iceberg, and the world of fragrance is this big iceberg. What I'm gonna show you today is about this very little top at the end, at the tip of the iceberg, but I think it's really fun. We're gonna have fun. And then at the end of it, I'm just gonna have to share my tips and tricks with you, which is Dr. Kuhn's famous, give the students 3 pieces of advice. So that's what I'm gonna do. So let's get started. About me. So I was born in Mérida, Venezuela, which is a region on the Andes. I was born and raised there, grew up my whole life until I was about 18. And growing up, I was always really surrounded by my mom and my grandma that were like huge beauty, makeup, skincare people. That's kind of like what sparked my curiosity on the colors of these things, on the textures of these things, and kind of why I started to get interested in studying chemical engineering. But it wasn't until I moved to France in 2015 that my parents gave me the amazing opportunity to study abroad in France, where I started to learn more like truly about the fragrance industry. So if you didn't know, France is kind of like a huge fragrance hub in the world. It's like the fragrance hub in the world, and a lot of really famous perfumers come from them. Raw materials in perfumery come from France, and just like the most popular like fragrance houses, let's say, are located in France. So not only I got to like really immerse myself in the French culture and learn the language, but it's when I started to develop like even more this passion for the fragrance industry more specifically. And then fast forward to 2026, and now I live in New York, and like any other 27-year-old going through a quarter life crisis, I've decided to start running marathons, becoming a DJ, and being an influencer. So actually, me and Kimberly, my bestie over there, are going to be DJing the mixer later on, and if you guys didn't plan on coming to that, you should definitely come to that. And that's my dog Forrest. So yes.
Are you a no request DJ?
No, we have requests. We got song requests. So let us know. We'll put them in the playlist. So now we're getting into the education and kind of like my experience. So I started when I moved to the United States, which was in 2017. I started my education at Georgia Southern University, which back then used to be called Armstrong State University, and they did not offer chemical engineering. But I told everybody I was a chemical engineering major, and they were like, sure. Anyway, I did engineering coursework in Georgia Southern, and my plan originally was like, oh, I'll just transfer to Georgia Tech, go work in the beauty industry, end the story, everything is beautiful, but that's not how it happened. I didn't get into Georgia Tech, spoiler alert, and then I transferred to VCU in the spring of 2020. But before then, I was just like trying to do internships and stuff like that. So my first internship was actually Strength of Nature in Savannah, Georgia, and they're like a hair care manufacturing place, but it was my very first like summer doing internships, so I mostly just followed around my manager at the time that was formulation engineer, or she was like a formulator in the lab, so that was my very first experience with formulation. But then when I moved to Virginia and started my background in chemical engineering in Virginia, I came here in the spring. So if you go to VCU, you know, like you can't take chemical engineering classes right away in the spring, like you have to wait for the cycle in the fall. So I just went to the career fair, or to the career engineering services, and I was like, how can I get an internship in beauty? And she was like, girl, all we have here is tobacco and medicine, so pick your fighter. And I was like, well, I'll go to the career fair. So I went to the career fair, and honestly, Sabra was the only company that I recognized. I was like, wait, I know the hummus, I know the product, so sure, let me drop off my resume at Sabra. And I did, but then COVID happened, so I went back to Savannah, Georgia, and they reached out to me when I was in Savannah, and they were like, hey, like, we're doing this internship, like, do you want to interview? I interviewed, got the position, and I worked as a continuous improvement intern for the summer of 2020, yes. And after that, they offered me to do like a parallel co-op, so that because I was taking like online classes, so they offered me to do like a parallel co-op for the fall. And I worked mainly in the plant, so I was like in charge of kind of helping them with the cooking of the chickpeas. I know it doesn't sound really fancy, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So I did my process engineering co-op over the fall, and this is when I started applying to other internships. Mind you, I knew about the L'Oreal internship since my first experience, and I was like, I want to get this L'Oreal internship. But I applied every summer. Again, spoiler alert, didn't get in. But I was applying to other places too because I just was really interested in doing internships. I used to think that internships were like a really great free ticket or like a free pass to just like experiencing things because you don't really have that much commitment. Like you can go for the summer and then maybe go to a different place the next summer. So then that's when I applied to Altria, which are located here in Richmond. And if you guys didn't know, Altria makes Marlboro and cigarettes and nicotine pouches, things like that. So I worked for the R&D engineering internship in the summer, and they were actually qualifying a plant to make these nicotine pouches. And so I got to work on what goes inside of the nicotine pouches. And they were having issues with the flowability of the powder. It was really cool. It was one of the internships that I feel like the work that I did really carried on, and they developed that work even further and helped them a lot. But when I was in this internship, I talked to somebody, and I don't remember how I got connected into their flavor lab. So I was like, wait, flavor, fragrances, like there has to be some sort of connection then. So I did the parallel co-op in the product development flavor lab, and they were so amazing. These people work there they do 7 years of experience and like flavoring experience to even like work as a scientist in these labs. And even though I didn't bring much to the table in this position, this is when I first got to learn about nose training and like trying different molecules and what do they taste like, what do they smell like, because all they work with is just like flavors. So they make the flavors for the nicotine pouches, and they used to make the flavors for Juul back then. But anyway, after that is when I got my internship at Estée Lauder, and I worked in the green chemistry department for the summer. And basically here it was not a lab work environment, but it wasn't a plant. It was mostly just doing research and data analysis and things like that. My project honestly was really easy, so I got to spend 50% of my time finishing my project working on that, and then the other 50% shadowing absolutely every team that I could think of. I shadowed the flavor labs, I shadowed the formulation labs. Like I was really interested in how like makeup gets made and just all these things. Like I just like wanted to learn. So I did the internship in the summer of 2022, and then I graduated in 2023, where is when I accepted my full-time position as an associate engineer in the business continuity lab. So that's the job that I currently have now. And in this lab, I'm specifically part of the reformulations team, so we deal with any like regulatory issues in that. But I think it's really fun to work there because you're not like enclosed to just only making one type of product. So I've made from hand washes, body washes, to foundations, and like there's people in my lab that make lipsticks, and all kinds of products in our portfolio. And it's also not non-branded, so we work with like all the brands that the company has. And working in BCL, I realized that at Estée Lauder you could do these things called stretch assignments, which is basically like a part-time job while you still have your full-time job. So I decided to do that because, as I've already made it clear, I was really interested in fragrance. And I started my stretch assignment as an aroma scientist in the flavor lab back in October. So this lasts about 6 months, so that means it's ending very soon in April. But when I was at when I started like this stretch assignment, it was basically compounding, or it is basically compounding aromas for some of the Aveda products. And that just means also being in the lab, like mixing certain raw materials to make up a smell of something. And then they will use that later on for body washes, creams, even fine fragrance, which are the perfumes. While being at Estée Lauder, my interest for even like deepening my education in the fragrance world, like I really wanted to do like even something more with fragrance from an educational point of view. But perfumery school is either really expensive or it's all in Paris, and I can go to Paris, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just have a question. For people who are interested in fragrance but maybe don't have the resources, like you're saying, to go to fragrance school, do you think that there are ways to kind of like practice and kind of self-learn fragrance at home?
Absolutely. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the olfactive smelling session, but yeah, that is a really good point. So I found out about these international masters in fragrance formulation. I got cut off over there, but anyway, it's with the University of Florence in Italy. I didn't go to Italy. It was like an online program where they sent us a kit about like 200 raw materials, and we just did all the classes online and following the instructor by like smelling, and it was like a very complete program. It touched everything from formulation. It was very organic chemistry based, like organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry and all chemistry based, but also there was like design, marketing, regulatory, botanical things, and it was very complete. So I can talk about this more if you guys have questions at the end. But now, let's get started into why I chose, or why fragrance. So for me personally, I think that fragrance captures the perfect combination between art and science. There is so much science into fragrance, and it's something that we use every day. You might not think about it, but there's fragrance in soaps, there's fragrance in shampoo, and obviously in the beauty industry, but also in the food industry, like I was saying earlier, related to the flavors. So it's a very broad industry, and it like really caught my attention. Then another thing is that I think is fascinating the way that the human brain and nose, there's like a connection for scent. So if you guys didn't know, the olfactory nerve, it creates like a fast pathway to the amygdala and the hippocampus, which is what is connected to our memories and our emotions. So that's why maybe like if you smell something and it reminds you of something in the past or like a past experience, like the brain and the nose are very, very connected, and that's something that I think is fascinating. Other than that, also, well, like I was saying, like olfactive memory, it's a thing, and it's one of the senses that is, I guess, like more important and is said to be like lasting forever. But also having like fragrance evaluation skills can make you like a better candidate either at your job or at any place, because training your nose is really important for analytics or PD approvals or stability of fragrances or any other like analysis. Like this is very, very heavily done in Estée Lauder, and I'm actually right now trying to become like a fragrance evaluator, but it takes a long time for training. But at the end of it, I think it's like a really good skill to have, because not everybody has this like fragrance evaluator certificate. And if any of those things didn't caught your attention, just maybe you're interested in money, and the fragrance industry, it is really growing pretty fast, and it's expected to reach about $96 million at the end of 2033. So let's talk a little bit more about the differences between fragrances versus flavors, and like the differences between like the senses of smell versus taste. So fragrances, by definition, are a chemical mixture compounded to give off a pleasant odor. I know sometimes maybe it's not pleasant to you, but it has to do with the smell. And then flavors, on the other hand, is a group of substances present in food that induce smell. So this is more related with your taste and also your smell. But the difference between these things is that it is only known to men there are 5 flavor profiles. So that is sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, which is meat, let's say. And odor, there's like so many of it. Like there's so many things that you can describe that you smell. And it's really interesting also because we tend to grab like descriptive words from other senses. Like for example, if you smell the grass, you would say like, oh, this smells green, but that's a color. Like that comes from your vision. But if you say something is sweet, like that's taste. So there's not really like descriptors for specifically smelling something, which is why I think it's even cooler. And this over here is the fragrance wheel. There's so many fragrance wheels out there, but this is kind of like the most industry standard one. And it just like drags you down all these smells that are like citruses, water, green, fruity, you see all the smells. And today we're actually gonna be smelling from 6 of these categories, and that will be citrus, floral, green, woody. What else? we'll get into it. I forgot the other two. But basically what I wanted to point out here is that there are so many different fragrances in the world, and approximately about 25,000 different fragrances, including like perfumes, soaps, detergents, candles, even like air fresheners and things like that. And you might see them on the label that they're called like sea breeze or white linen or things like that, but those are not smells naturally found or that occur naturally in nature. So that's why we use chemical processes to make up new smells. So actually in 1966, Pfizer compounded this molecule called cologne, and it's basically to remind you of the smell of ocean water. So if you smell that, it probably will remind you of the sea, but this is a note that is like vastly used in perfumery for perfumes that are like watermelon flavor or watermelon scented or cucumber scented, because it kind of like is the molecule that smells like water, which is really interesting because water doesn't smell like anything. But now we're gonna get into our olfactive session, and that's what you have. So each one of you should have 6 blotters in the clip, and then the bottles in front of you. So their label, we're gonna start with number 1, and you can just pass it around and dip it to the first line of the blotter. Yeah, we're gonna get started. Here we go. Wait, yeah. You can take off, you can do whatever with the blotter. You can write on it when I put the name on the screen of what we're smelling.
Qué miedo, mi pana, tengo miedo, estoy asustada.
Okay.
Vamos bien en el tiempo. I think we're good on time.
Okay. Wait, don't dip it yet. Did you dip it already? Are you smelling already? Yeah? Okay, let's start. Yay! Olfactive family. The citrus family. So, you can dip, smell. What you guys are smelling right now is...
Wait, I should dip and smell also. Why didn't I do it?
Where are the other ones?
Dios, qué nervio. Esta parte no la practiqué, la parte de ponernos a oler cosas.
Okay.
A la broma, está llegando más gente.
Come to my live over here. Don't back it. Okay, is everybody... Oh, there's some fish here. Great. Everybody smelling bergamot oil? What do you think? Citrusy, yes. Correct. So one interesting fact about the citrus family is that it's kind of like they're the ones that carry more history, because the first perfume made in the world, it was made in the late 17th century, and it was created in Cologne, Germany, which is a city, which is why it's called Eau de Cologne, because Cologne is the name of the city. So if you guys didn't know what Cologne meant, it's basically just the name of the city. But it was created in Germany in the 17th century, and it was very revolutionary because it inspired the making of citrus perfumes later on. But when this was made, actually, was made more in like a medicinal way, because back then they believed, or they didn't believe, but back then perfume was mostly used just for like aromatherapy and like medicinal things. But this was the very first perfume that was made that kind of like carried more into like the beauty market and like the beauty industry and stuff like that. So it's very revolutionary. And one of the most common methods of extraction for citrus families is cold expression. So this is a mild process for the extraction of essential oils. It's used in cases where steam distillation will modify or change the end product, and it's used mainly for the extraction of citrus oils using the peel. So you use the peel to extract the aroma of the fruit. And there's many citrus raw materials, but I just like to list a little bit. The natural ones are lemon, bergamot oil, orange, mandarin, and then the synthetic ones are citral, D-limonene, dihydromercenol. These are all chemical compounds. So moving on, we're gonna smell number 2. Do you guys like bergamot? Very fresh, right? And like clean. So another fun fact about citrus stuff, while you guys take the next one, is that they're the quickest to go. They're very volatile, simple molecules. The lower molecular weight of the molecule is related to like the volatility and how much it smells. So higher volatility for citrus smells, that means they just go away quicker. So if you have a citrus perfume, that's why you probably have to reapply it more often. So next we're smelling the floral family. So number 2 is okay. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so for our floral family today, we're gonna smell phenyl ethyl alcohol. So this might not smell flowery to you. To me, when I first smelled it, it smelled like nasal spray. Does anybody else get nasal spray? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So phenyl ethyl alcohol is naturally found in the petals of flowers, or roses, sorry. So it's like a key component for making up the smell of a rose. It's really pretty. Well, this is not so pretty. The rose is pretty. But for the methods of extraction for flowers is called enfleurage. And basically, this is where petals are placed between layers of purified fat, which becomes saturated later on with the flower oil. And then you wash it with alcohol to obtain the absolute from the natural. But one thing about natural materials is, as anything, they're not as consistent because every harvest is different. And the availability of it could be very challenging due to different altitudes or different locations of where flowers grow. But also, fun fact, in order to make 100 grams of rose absolute or rose oil, you need 500 kilograms of roses. So not very sustainable, which is why we make these in the lab sometimes. So that's a good point about a floral family. And then these are some of the natural raw materials, and then the synthetic raw materials on the other end. The citronellol 950 is also another key component to make up a rose smell. So another thing that I might have not mentioned earlier is that smell is just so unique to every person because we all have different experiences, like culturally, growing up, different memories, different experiences. So nothing that you smell and you think smells like something, I can't tell you that is wrong. So that's a good thing about it. You'll never know. Now we're going to smell the green family. So number 3. Yes. So green is, well, I'll let you dip it and talk for a little bit. Yes. You can do both. So actually, best to do both because there's like a little balance of like natural versus synthetic. But in cases where creating something natural is like more expensive or just like not very sustainable, that's where you have the option to do also the synthetic. It's honestly preference of the perfumer. Like, yeah.
I know that you said that like with like a
Yes. Oh, wood specifically is so hard to extract, and it's such like a unique raw material. It has so like it lasts for so long. It's like considered like a fixative, so it keeps you like really long lasting, which is why it's so expensive. But honestly, it's very highly used in like niche perfumery. Yeah. Yes, the incense and the coated and the extract, it's absolutely that, yeah. So, you guys smell cis-3 hexanol acetate. So, this material, actually I wanted to bring you cis-3 hexanol, which is a leaf alcohol, and it smells more green to me. Like, it smells more like fresh cut grass. It's actually the compound that is released when you cut grass, so it smells like fresh cut grass. But this one, doesn't it smell more fruity to you? Who thinks it smells like a watermelon Jolly Rancher? Yay! So it's more sweet. And the reason for that being, or organic chemistry. So for functional groups, every functional group kind of has like a different odor or olfactive characteristic. So for example, alcohols, like linear alcohols, tend to be more fresh, more clean, floral maybe, but then the esters are a little bit more fruity and sweeter. So going from cis-3-hexanol, which is the alcohol, the esterification reaction gives us the cis-3-hexanol acetate, which adds that ester group that makes it smell more fruity. So that's really cool. And these are some of the most common green raw materials. Okay, I'm going so fast. Like I need to chill. Yeah. But maybe we'll have more time for questions. I feel like that. Okay. So what do you think about cis-3-hexanyl acetate? Don't like it, she don't like it. You like it? Okay. Does it remind you of something? I mean, you already said Jolly Rancher, so maybe that. But anything else? I don't know. Yeah? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the melon ones, right? Yeah. So this is a component also like used to create like a fruity melon flavor. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like at the tail end of it, there's like something that's almost leafy, but not quite.
Yeah.
But like it's like the tail end.
Yeah. So it's not so green, right? So the hexanol, the alcohol would smell more of that like leafy green, which is really cool. Su madre. Okay, we're going into the fruity family. Yay! So that's number 4. Okay, so for the fruity family, this is a very interesting family because it's kind of hard to extract natural smell of fruits. Again, they're natural, so they're inconsistent. There is high cost. They're also like fragile, not so stable, which is why there are some synthetic materials that pertain to the fruity family. And actually, these synthetic materials or compounds made are naturally found in fruits. So, for example, the one that you're smelling right now, Iono Natural, is found in berries. So, does it smell like berries to you? Red berries, maybe plum or blueberries, like kind of that smell. And it's interesting because like different configurations or different isomers of these molecules will give a different smell. So, alpha ionone smells like red fruits, while beta ionone smells like blueberries and things like that. So also ethyl butyrate is found in bananas, alpha damascene is found in apples, gamma ondocalactone is found in peaches. So the most common methods of extraction for fruity materials is solvent extraction, which tends to separate compounds based on their relatively, well, you guys know this. You are all chemical engineers, so I'm not here to teach you. Yeah, what? Isoamyl acetate. Hey. And then also CO2 supercritical extraction for the extraction of fruity raw materials. But like I said before, there's not so common, so that's why it's just synthesized in the lab. And then a fun fact about the fruity family is that this year it's highly trending in perfumery, but more like hyper-realistic fruits. So, for example, strawberry, fig, mango, like you will see a lot of these fragrances just like become more popular in the market this year. Or peach, passion fruit, things like that. What do you think of this one?
I like it.
You like it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good. See, yeah, good point. Okay. Okay, ahora no, el tiempo está pasando lentísimo y yo apurada que no iba a tener tiempo. Okay. All right. Are you guys ready for number 5? Gourmand family. Yes. Yes, I agree. That's so depending on like what you like to wear year round. Like for example, I like to wear sweet stuff in the winter, not in the summer, because in the summer it's just like a hot pastry. But I feel like fresh, like the green, something like more fresh would be good for like all year round. Okay. Yeah, sorry. We'll have questions at the end.
No, I meant like they're kind of long. Are you gonna give it?
I'll be around. You can talk to me outside. I'll give you my information. Don't worry about it. We'll be in touch. Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. That's what I want. Okay, so are you smelling vanilla flavor? Yeah. So the Gourmand family is also interesting because it kind of started as just a family for vanilla and vanilla adjacent. So caramel, chocolate, like just like sweet things like that. But just with the pass of time and just evolution and innovation, the Gourmand family has kind of like expanded more into like edible. So that's why there's so many like rice perfumes and milk perfumes, or just like exploring more like food kind of sense. But here's when we're going to talk about also naturals versus synthetic. We talked about earlier how naturals sometimes can be hard to get, not very sustainable, or just like different problems on obtaining natural materials. But the difference between a natural and a synthetic material from a chemist's point of view and just like a nose is almost no difference, because our nose receptors interact with the molecule that smells like that and just recognizes it as vanilla. So there might be differences between these two depending on how you synthesize the molecule, if there's waste, if there's contamination. So there might be like differences like that, but the threshold of smelling is so small that the human nose can probably not even detect it. For example, a really good example is coumarin, which is this molecule over here. It can be synthesized, but it's also naturally occurring in tonka beans. And to the nose, it smells the same. Like whether you get it from tonka beans, whether you synthesize it in the lab, there's kind of like almost no reason to, or no way to distinct it. And the most common methods of extraction for these materials are solvent extraction, like we said before, supercritical CO2 extraction, but also tincturing, which is a traditional method of soaking aromatic compound or plant materials, such like a vanilla pots, for example, in high-proof alcohol over several weeks or months to create like a dilute extract. Yeah?
So I know that for specifically for lots of things you have to use specifically flavors alcohol. Is that
Yes.
alcohol that is being soaked?
No, this is purely just for the raw material. The perfume making comes way later on down the line.
So what kind of weapons is it used as? Is that tincture used in that?
So what you get at the end would be like the raw material that you use later on to mix with other raw materials to make up a perfume. We'll get into this later, which is the exciting part. Oh my god, so many people are joining. Oh my god. Okay, so some natural common raw materials are vanilla absolute. Yeah, thank you, Aubrey.
Hi everyone! I know that we're all really excited to be a part of this workshop. We have a lot of people in this room and we'd love for you to have conversations, but we really appreciate it if you respected Anna and just let her kind of, keep your conversations to a minimum while she's talking. Alright?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. We'll talk later. I'll be around. We can talk later on. But the most common like natural raw materials are vanilla absolute, tonka bean, like I said before, cocoa absolute, vanilla flavor. Do you guys think this smells like chocolate a little bit?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this one? It's
It's like vanilla extract.
like a what? A Twinkie. Yeah, very common. And then the synthetic raw materials are vanillin, coumarin, ethyl maltol. These are all compounds that we know in the lab. And then for the last family, we have the woody family. So go ahead and grab number 6. And for this?
It's always citrus. Oh yeah, they're exciting. Or to like a big, they just drop one like amber. They can what about this red thing that they
Okay, so what do we think about this one? Does it smell like wood to you, like fresh wood, or like wet wood? To me, it smells like wet wood, right? More than like dry wood. So, one thing about, well, this is a thing about everything, not just like woody raw materials, but fragrances are used, like I was saying before, for like traditions and aromatherapy. And this one specifically is used for purification and protection properties that are attributed to cedar oil. Because we're smelling cedar wood oil. Sorry, I didn't mention that. But other raw materials, like synthetic raw materials that are part of the woody family, are sandranol, iso-E super, cedrol, cis-alpha santanol, which is found naturally in sandalwood, and ambrostar, which is also like a molecule created by a company and doesn't exist in nature. But methods of extraction for these raw materials include solvent extraction, supercritical CO2 extraction, steam distillation, and dry distillation. So that's woody for you guys. You like? Yes. Yes.
Are there any like ethical like concerns for like when you extract? Because like I don't really know much about like extracting fragrances, but are there any like problems that you guys are always like trying to solve in terms of like sustainability or like ethical?
Yeah, so there are a lot of organizations around the world that regulate the way that fragrances, or I guess like just chemicals, this is not just fragrances, but like chemicals are extracted or fragrances are being made or put out. So the answer is yes. Do I know a lot more about it? No. But we can look into that later. Yeah. So after we smell all these 6 raw materials, just imagine in the world there's just a lot more than these 6 that we smelled today. And like I said, all the other fragrance families. But basically, the way that it works is that there is the fragrance pyramid that is based on the volatility of ingredients. So when you make up a perfume, it has 3 layers. There is the bottom notes, the middle or the heart notes, and then the top notes. So let's start from the top. The top notes is kind of like what we smelled earlier, the citrus and the floral, and it's that initial olfactive impression that is perceived by you, and like that's when you maybe decide whether or not you like the perfume. But these are small light molecules that evaporate very quickly and last about 5 minutes. So that's what I was saying earlier, higher volatility tends to be just like they disappear quicker. Then the middle notes is kind of like the developing phase that emerges into the top, or after the top note. And this is kind of like what gives the perfume the theme of the perfume. Like this is a vanilla perfume, but there are so many other raw materials in that perfume, but the heart of that perfume is vanilla, so that's why we would call it vanilla. And these notes last up to about an hour. And then for the bottom notes, which is the final phase of the scent, it lingers on your skin, it lingers after the evaporation of everything else in the perfume. And these are more persistent elements because, again, they're heavier molecules, they last longer, has lower volatilities, and then they can last up to a few days, even like sometimes if you like smell your clothes even after you wash them, like, oh my God, it still smells like perfume. It's probably because of those bottom notes in the perfume. And just a little quick rundown on like the common concentrations for perfume, so you guys kind of know, like especially when you're buying things, maybe like There are different concentrations, but these are like the most common ones. So for the eau de cologne, remember when we talked about in the beginning, that was like the very first perfume, like very light, very fresh. Most of the raw materials are like citrusy and things like that. So the concentration of fragrance oil in this type of perfume is 2 to 4%, and this got messed up. But it lasts from 2 to 3 hours on your skin, so that's why like maybe you have to like reapply. But then eau de toilette we have is from 5 to 15% concentration, and then everything else is alcohol, by the way, in the fragrance. So it lasts to maybe about like 3 to 4 hours. Then you have eau de parfum, which is, why did these guys get cut off? I just realized. Sorry, that doesn't seem like that. But 15 to 20% concentration for eau de parfum, and it tends to last from like 6 to 8 hours on your skin. And then last but not least is extrait de parfum. There are even more with higher concentrations, but extrait de parfum is one like the most common one, from 20 to 45% concentration of fragrance oil. So this is that one that lasts like 8 to 12 hours in your skin, or even like days after that. So this is all about, this is everything that I have about perfume things, and we're just gonna go ahead and jump into my 3 last pieces of advice. So my 3 pieces of advice, I had a really hard time trying to come up with this, but my very first one that I will always stand on this hill is be loud about your passion. I feel like I've been talking about trying to work in the beauty industry or trying to make perfume since I was little. Like, I would share it with my friends, I would share it with everybody. Did I know how I was going to get there? Absolutely not. But just talking about it allowed me to meet people that maybe had a connection with somebody. Like, just, you don't know how far it takes you to like just talk about these things, like have big dreams and talk about them, like share them with your friends, share your passion with everybody, and somebody along the line will kind of like help you connect with something that can help you along the way. For example, like I think for me the most key moment was when I was working at Altria, and I brought my passion about like the beauty industry. They were like, oh, we have a flavor lab. Like, that's kind of like related to fragrance. Like, do you want to go shadow the flavor lab? So I went into the flavor lab, like I told you, I shadowed them, and this is really kind of like the experience that I used the most in my resume to kind of place myself in like the fragrance industry or even the beauty industry. Even though, like I said before, I didn't bring much to the table in this experience, I really used that experience to kind of like highlight my passion for it and like trying to get into that route. Then my second piece of advice is that school is a simulation. And I don't say this like kidding, but when you start working after school, like a 9 to 5 job, you realize like there's no spring breaks, there's no fall breaks, there's no like midterms and things like that. So you tend to, or at least this happened to me, and this is why I'm sharing it with you. I feel like we need to like get better about like time management, because personally when I was in school I was very organized, had my calendar, I was a Google Calendar girly, like iPad girly, everything. And once I started in corporate, that just like went out the window, because I was like, yay, I have my full-time job, I don't need to care about these things anymore. But you do, because your full-time job doesn't have to become everything in your life. So then you also have to plan time to take care of yourself. Like, I remember I saw a tweet or like a meme that said, don't let that corporate job ruin your gym routine and your skincare routine. And I was like, exactly. Like, you still have to do all these other things, and I think time management is key for that. And then my last one is adaptability is a power skill. I had to move so many times from so many places, like moving from Venezuela to here. Like, I wanted to go to chemical engineering school in Venezuela, but that just wasn't the option for me. So like, you have to adapt. And like you guys heard me talk about earlier, I always wanted to work in the beauty industry, but I did have to go through the food industry and work to make hummus and work in the plant with these like big columns of like cooking chickpeas, like maybe not so fancy of what I wanted to do back then. But if I didn't adapt in like all of these situations, and if I didn't adapt to the environment and like the tasks that I was giving, I don't think I would be here talking to you guys. So adaptability makes you in general like a more well-rounded person. It helps you be flexible, and flexibility and resilience just kind of like help you be more calm about making your decisions in the long run. So I think those things are very important. So if that's it, thank you so much. Now we can talk about questions. We have like 20 minutes actually, or like, no, we have like 10, 15 minutes for questions. So Yes, I'll take all your questions. Wait, he raised his hand.
I
Hi.
have 2 questions.
Yes.
Where do you DJ in New York?
Okay, so I'm a bedroom DJ. I DJ in my bedroom, but I'm like learning, trying to practice. I haven't DJed at any like venues before. I've DJed at weddings and events that I've been hired for, but not at venues currently. So maybe
What
in
part
New
of
York.
chemical engineering do you think helped you with your, sorry,
With my DJing?
to help you with your everyday job?
With my everyday job, that's a really good question. And I was supposed to talk about this in the talk, but I found it really hard to find like a specific thing about like the chemical engineering curriculum that helps me with my daily job, because in my job it's like mainly I guess the science background, like the chemistry background, like the lab practices and things like that, because I do work in the lab and I have to batch and like the handling of the raw materials and the safety of it and everything. But specific to like say like distillation, I don't want work in a plant. There are engineers at Estée Lauder that maybe like deal with this a lot more, but my position specifically is more like formulation on the lab. So I would say like kind of like a very strong science background, like chemistry background, but more than that, I think it was the opportunities, like the career engineering like services, and just like yeah, I feel like that's like kind of like a little bit heavier on that side. Yay.
So as like a lot of like people, as the world is moving towards like circular economy, and I know that you're working like with these big companies who are at the forefront of innovation, have you seen anything in terms of like using waste streams of like paper and pulp or the food industry in like biocatalysis for fragrance molecules?
So maybe that would be a question more for somebody that works like in a fragrance house. So one thing that I didn't mention about working at Estée Lauder, all these fragrance oils technically get made by perfumers. Like perfumers are responsible for making these fragrance oils, so we don't have perfumers in the company. So it's like kind of like getting bought by the company to like make or produce these perfumes. So the interaction that I have with like all that stuff is very like surface level. So I don't have a very good answer for your question. I'm so sorry, Katie. Yes.
This I guess is more of a cross between photo factory memory and then also like marketing and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like as we said earlier, like certain scents trigger certain memories and
Mhm.
stuff. And then I'm assuming with Estée Lauder, you guys work very closely with like your brand
Yeah,
qualities and stuff
yeah.
like that. So if they come to you saying that like we want a perfume that has like this vibe for this
Mhm.
season and stuff like that. Like you said that varies in fruit perfumes
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
rise
yeah.
right now.
Mhm.
Probably in time with summer coming and stuff.
Yes.
Is that how you guys like when you're layering your perfumes and you're getting all your ingredients together in the R&D lab? Is that how you guys are like kind of mixing together to everything?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So there's like the people in the lab that make the perfume. There's people in between that kind of like work with product development, and they do have to have like a chemistry background, like or just like more like a chemical understanding of what goes into perfume. And then there's marketing. So it's like the way that it goes is like marketing comes with a brief that they've like studied trends or something, and they're like, okay, this year we need to make peach perfumes. So they go to the brand, they go to the brand PD person, and they're like, hey, this is the brief, this is what the vibe we wanted to give, these are the colors, these are, you know, like all the marketing things. And then the product development person is in charge of passing down that information to the person that makes the perfume, and they create like, I don't know, like a million different variations, and then it kind of like goes back and forth between like deciding, okay, this is the one that we're going to launch, if that makes sense. So it's a really long, creative, but also like scientific process. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So as someone who's both like a consumer of beauty and also very interested in joining the industry, something that I kind of find interesting is how specifically like consumer driven it is, and just as someone curious about kind of like the innovation for the fragrance sector and like how it's going to move forward. What's your kind of just like, I guess, opinion on where the fragrance industry is headed and kind of how like consumer opinions and wants kind of both drives that and also hinders it?
Yeah. So consumer-based anything can be great, but also can be not so good because the consumer technically doesn't have kind of like the knowledge or I guess like the background and how these things were made. So I don't know if you guys remember back then, it was like, oh, no more parabens. Like somebody saw that no more parabens, but why no more parabens? Like nobody tried to look into like why no more parabens, and then they started to make these. So parabens is a preservative, so they started to make these natural preservatives and putting them to like take parabens out. But what they didn't realize is maybe a natural preservative doesn't perform as well as a synthetic one. It's probably more inconsistent. It could probably cause allergies maybe because it comes from a natural thing, but consumers tend to like kind of like don't really understand that. But it's really hard for companies to like do something like so consumer forward when there's like information like. And so from my point of view, like when I worked in the green chemistry lab, this is something that I was like talking about. It was like it doesn't have to be like a work on the company, so like making something different for the consumer, but more so like on educating the consumer. Like all these things are chemicals, but chemicals are also found in nature. So like kind of like try like the clean washing like movement or whatever. So from the fragrance point of view, though, I think coming up in the New Year's or the new time with like fragrance, I think there's a lot more access for people to make their own fragrances. So back then it was like only perfumers can make perfumes. Only perfumers, you have to have all these years of experience to like make perfumes and be certified to make perfumes. But it's truly like a craft that anybody can like partake. Like you can train your nose for these things. Like you're not born with like a trained nose. Like this is something that you can train, something that you can like work on. So I think in the future it would be more of a thing that there's like artisan perfumers maybe, or just like independent perfumers instead of just being part of like a conglomerate and like working as a perfumer for that conglomerate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess I agree with that, because if you think about it, fragrance is one of those categories where like I think in other sensory experiences, like anyone can kind of become a chef.
Yeah,
or like
exactly.
Anyone can start becoming like a musician, and I feel like scent is one of those senses that has kind of been gatekept.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree 100%. So thank you. Yes.
Hello, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So in my previous background, I've seen in the pharmaceutical industry, like in R&D, there's a huge usage of computational chemistry and AI, large language models, in finding different combinations of drugs for targeted drug delivery. So I'm curious, in your industry, how does that play a role in your R&D process design, and how do you utilize it?
So I'll break it down into two parts. So AI is being used in the fragrance industry to, I guess, prompt something, make this. Sure, I'm very anti-AI when it comes to like generative things, but specifically in the world of perfumery, because I think what makes the fragrance special is the person's the person's brain and the person's experiences that are making this. So, but AI is being heavily used in compounding like different molecules, or like creating different kind of like mods. And like I would say, like you give it the brief and then it gives you like all these options, and maybe people are taking that as a base and like starting from there, so that they don't have to like do all the work that comes before and just have the computer do it. But specifically in my role, I guess in the company, AI is being used more so, for example, like we work with making makeup. So let's say a lipstick. When you have to take the stability of a lipstick, you have to drop the lipstick 20 times at the same height, however many days. If you have 25 samples, that's going to take forever for you to do. So I think AI in the world of beauty is being used in many things, but specifically for predicting like stability or predicting information like that you can just not sit there, drop the lipstick 25 times. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Yes.
Is there a difference in quality or longevity between the natural and synthetic scent?
So yes, in the quality. I think when it comes from natural materials, depending also where it comes from, I think it's all depending on where it comes from. I know roses are mainly made, or the best quality of roses are in France, in Grasse, and that's kind of where the Chanel gardens are, and that's where they harvest all their flowers. So it depends more so on the location of where they're grown, the natural materials. But for the longevity, that's what I was talking about earlier. It has to do more with the functional group of the compound. So, like I said, lower size molecules like limonene or something like that that has like a linear alcohol will evaporate quicker. But when you're extracting the scent of something, you're extracting the molecule that your nose perceives and goes up in the brain, and it's like, oh, this is rose. So it doesn't really matter, like from a point of view of like, does it last longer in a perfume? I think the quality of a perfume has more to do with like the quality of the ingredients and where they got them from and how they were synthesized. So I was saying like when you synthesize materials, there might be contamination on them, but you have to do more work to like have the pure like molecule or the pure material, and that would be higher quality than a synthetic material that was just left with the contamination, if that makes sense.
So like would that like be the cause of like the difference in price of like a Chanel perfume versus like when you get
Exactly.
$1
Yeah.
for-
Absolutely. That's basically, well, mostly marketing also, but that's like a very big one. Like where they come from. Like if it's natural, it's definitely a lot more expensive than making something in the lab. So that's what attributes mainly to the difference of price. So yeah.
What would you say is like the most fun part of your job?
That I get to try everything on myself. So when I worked at Sabra, great. I used to get hummus all the time. When I worked at Altria, not so much into the nicotine pouches, so I didn't get to try the product. But that's kind of why I wanted to work in this industry, because I wanted to be, like, I wanted to feel the thing. So one thing that I didn't mention about my job is, like, in the reformulations team, we are making these things, and you have to feel them. Like, you have to test them. Does it feel the same as the control? Does it smell the same as the control? You're changing the formula, but does it perform the same, smell the same, look the same? Like, there's so much, like, sensory involved with, like, that part of my job, and I think that's, like, the most fun of it. But also, this just came into my mind. Working in New York and like at Estée Lauder, there's so many events, like fun events that you can go to in the city to like learn more about like perfume or like learn more about the brands, or just like, since it's like in New York City, like there's so much going on. So I think being there, like being connected to like all of these opportunities are also like kind of like the most fun part of my job.
As a follow-up, where in New York City would that be?
So their headquarters is on 5th Ave, like right on top of the Apple store. You know, like the big Apple store with the thing. That's where the headquarters are, but they have offices all throughout New York City. But my location specifically is on Long Island, actually. So the R&D campus is on Long Island. So I live on Long Island because I don't want to commute. But yeah. Yeah.
Even though the fragrance industry in general is on the rise, I feel as though I've seen a lot of greenwashing about like fragrance versus fragrance-free skincare. Do you know if there's like a rise in fragrance in like body washes and perfumes, but then like a diminish
And like the fragrance
in
of
like
them?
skincare and whatnot?
Yeah,
or-
so, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to us that fragrance, like, is chemicals and has photosensitivity and things like that. But I don't think, and that depends also for people that have, like, allergies. I think that's, like, what is, like, the emphasis on is the most. Because since these are made with, like, natural ingredients, too, like, people can be allergic to them. So, I don't know. I always like a little fragrance in my things. And I like to smell good. So, I do think there's, like, opportunity for... Also, another thing, they're also now making water-based fragrances. And I don't know how that works. Because, what do you mean? But it's a thing. Like, people are making them. I probably have to look more into it. But, yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like, the industry is going to continue to evolve and change. So, that's one thing. Yeah, are we out of time? Yes, we have 1 minute. One more question. Yes.
What's your favorite perfume, right?
Oh, no. Not that question. What's my favorite perfume? I have so many favorite perfumes, but lately, I think, I have it on here on the screen, actually. Lately has been this Matilda by Rosie Jane, because I smelled it recently. It's a passion fruit meringue caramel thing. So it smells really good. Actually, I have it. I'll bring it for the DJ mixer tonight, and I'll have it. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Come to the mixer. See you at the mixer. Oh, you're on my live, guys. Se acabó, mi gente, la tiro. Sorry, I was really nervous. Shout out to Kimberly for setting up the live. Nos vamos. Bye.